Hi, everybody. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you, even it's online. We're beginning today another day of the Structuralist Development Macroeconomic Work Group workshop. Today, we're planning to have three presentations. Uh, Danielle and Emerson Costa Santos will present the paper Coordination between Monetary and Fiscal Policies in Brazil, and analysis of the Brazilian economic post-inflation targets. And I will present the paper Determinants of Learning and Academic Performance in Brazilian Municipalities. And we are waiting for Fabio to present the paper Essays on the Labor Market, Analysis of Tax benefits and the Effects on the Labor Market of Municipalities in Northeast. I will start my presentation. I will have 20 minutes, and after that, it will be a pleasure to listen your comments and opinions about this paper. I will start the presentation now, and after that, we will have the presentation of Emerson and Danielle. This paper is the determinants of learning and academic performance in the Brazilian municipalities. The main motivation of this paper is understand the strategic role of the quality of education and the facilities of the schools on the individual and collective learning in society in a context of profound socioeconomic inequality. Some regions have good educational indicators and are poor. What explains a starting point is to understand which factor contribute to learning and to strategically direct public policy, and not only direct to education, but direct to other social and economic transformation in society. The paper aims to investigate the determinants of individual learning based on personal, family, and school factors. The human capital theory understands that the individual has the capacity to learn and improve his own work. But the contemporary ideas about the education and the economic aspects of education understands that the economic aspects are multidimensional, and understand the educational aspect is understand the familiar, the individual, the social, the environmental, and the urban and rural aspects. So the ideas of education and economics today are more complex than the few decades ago. And the theories and the researches about the economics of education uh, want to understand the role of the school inside and out the classroom. And this is an important point because some researchers, for example, understand that the sanitary aspects, the health aspects, impact the quality of the human capital. So the quality of the food in the first age of the individual can affect the quality of the human capital in the future. The quality of the neighborhood, the quality of the school, the social and familiar aspects are so important as the years of study to conform the human capital. This paper is basically mainly on the Hanushek's ideas about the facilities of the school and the quality of education and his economic, social, and sanitary importance to individual and society. This idea that the education is important to individual and society, it's essential for this paper because one of the goals is understand the capacity of the quality of education to impact the improvement of the improvement of the individual achievement, but not only about the individual. Only it's important so to the capacity of the collective aspect of the society and the municipalities to aggregate knowledge from each other. So if I improve my capacity of learning, I can contribute to the capacity of learning of other people in society. It's a complex and multidimensional and dynamic process. So the quality of education is not only relation to the school, it's a relation to the public policy and multiple aspects. The school, the family, the infrastructure, the technology, innovation. So uh, so these ideas of Hanushek are essential to this paper. This paper it's a work in progress. It's part of my PhD thesis, and I want to understand the the multiple aspects of education. In this part, we analyze the basic education in high school because we want to know how the individual get out to the school and introduced by the labor market. Uh, so the ideas of Hanushek are about this multidimensional aspect related to the accumulation of knowledge and a strategic role to quality of education inside and outside to the classroom. Uh, so in this in this page, there's an important message to understand the the scenario of the education in Brazil. We have the teaching effort education. Effort is not the dedication of the teacher, but the overload of the teacher. So when the teaching effort index is high, that means that the teacher is overloaded. So uh, as more high is the index, more low is the quality of the work of the teacher. It's important because we see that the low investment in education and the low investment in infrastructure of education and employer of new teachers, and after the idea of the importance of the professionals of education implies in the even more, even less people interested in work in the educational areas. So in this page, we see that between 2014 and 2023, increase the overload of the teachers in Brazil, especially in the basic education. What does mean? That mean that beyond the low infrastructure, the low payments, the teacher is overloaded. So the capacity to improve the quality in the classroom is less year after year. Here, these pages are in Portuguese because I take it in the in-net page in website. There's a Power BI of so many interesting information about the facilities, the qualities, and the structure of educational system in Brazil. So in Portuguese, it's important because it's easy to understand. But we see here in this page that the general facilities of the schools, the public schools in Brazil, reflects their we have an access to internet, the good access to internet in the schools, but there's no access to computer labs, to science labs, and it implies that we have no capacity to put the student in the position to create knowledge, because we know that one way to create knowledge is by practicing, by reflection and practicing. And where this happen in a school, in labs mainly, it happens in classroom, but mainly in labs. And the public schools in Brazil have no enough labs, especially science and computer labs. Uh, why we did this paper? We used mainly the data from the microdata from the in-app, the microdata from in-app in NA. The data of NA has so many information about the tests and about the individuals. We can see, for example, uh, what the job of the father of the individual, what the income of his family, what the scholarity of the family. This individual lives in rural or urban areas. So the data of NA have so many informations about the aspects of the individual and his family and the neighborhood and the social aspects involved. We use it to data from microdata of basic education in Brazil. And in this part of data, we can see so many informations about the schools. If the schools have labs, if the school have how many teachers, how many students, how many if the school has access to internet, if the school has access to water. So it's so many informations about the school. So the data was based on the social and individual aspects of the students and about the school. And with this data, we run three models. One multiple regression to explain the individual performance of the student on the NN tests. Why did we not use the DEB? Because the DEB data is not identified. We cannot see who made these tests. So it's not good to make researches. So we use NA because the data of NA are more identified. I cannot see who did the test, but I can see where he lives and how are their fathers. I cannot see the ID, but I can see the multiple aspects of this individual. That's why we chose to work in with the NA data. And after this first regression, we did two panel data to explain the performance of the public schools in Brazil. One is about the urban schools, and other is about the schools in rural areas. The first equation, it's in Portuguese, so I'm sorry. Uh, it's the want to explain the why are determinants of the learning and activities to individuals. So we have the log of the alien test scores as the dependent variable, and we have dummy for gender, for ethnicity, for public or private school, to urban or rural schools. We have the scholarity of the fathers, of the mothers, and the income family, the work of fathers and mothers, and this geladeira and bathroom are because we understand in the literature of the education that some aspects of the residence are important to understand the quality of life of the individual. If for example, an individual can access a bathroom in this room, that means that it has a minimal quality of life. And we plus one in this log because some of these questions can result in zero. So for we can do the regression, we plus one in that log. The second model, there's a panel data that the log of the average of the scores of a name for municipalities is a dependent point. And we can understand the average of the achievement of the scores of a name for municipal based on uh, the income of the teachers. Uh, IAT is that uh, index of efforts, teacher effort index that reveal the overload of the teacher, a structure of the school that implies to see if the school has a lab, computer lab, if has a science lab, if has access to internet, if has library. So we create an index to reveal the structure of the school based of main characteristics of the schools. It's important to see that we multiply some index to see the interaction of these questions. So we can see, for example, the interaction between the structure of public and urban schools. With this, we can see, for example, how are the quality of the schools in urban and confront the rural schools. We see so the relation between students and teacher in classroom. We see the relation between students and classroom, and we see the relation between individual and computers in the school. And there are a municipality issue. It's the World GDP. The other model is similar, but we have no urban qualities as rural qualities that imply the capacity of explaining the quality of the rural schools in Brazil. Here we have the results of the equation that is about the individual aspects of learning. And we can see that, for example, there's a, a perceptive inequality of gender. So if you are a woman, for example, that implies dummy is equal 1, you have 1.8 minus point in the score of NA. That must imply that does not imply that woman has less capacity to learn, but there are so many social and cultural and economic and policy aspects that implies in difficult to women to dedicate integrate to education. So it demands so many other resources. It is the similar point to understand, for example, why Black people had difficult to improve good scores, because there are so many aspects that's not just educational or economic that affected negatively these people. We are in the counter if a historical of a racism, and this imply difficult to these persons. Oh, I lost my presentation. I will try to do it again. Uh, I will try to put the slides again. Just a minute, please. Okay, I you cannot see my page, but The results of the. Can you see the slides? Não. Emerson, vocês conseguem ver, Isadora? Ok. Uh, I will go on without the page. It's almost in the end. In the regression tool, we can see that, for example, if I will try to see the slides in the computer. Uh, there's an interesting point. Uh, for example, if we have more students per class, that means that the teacher had more difficult to teach individual each student. So if we increase the rate between the student and class, we declines 8 points in the score in the average scores of an A. It's in public urban schools. And for example, in rural schools, we can see an interesting thing that is not direct to the theory. If we improve the quantity of computers per student, we declines the rates in the scores of an A. Maybe the students uh, play in the computer and not study, I don't know. And my further final considerations is among the main conclusions is the gender and ethnicity inequality evidenced by the lower individual performance. And there is an important point. Family income is a factor that affects the learning. We can see, for example, in the equation one, that the familiar income uh, affect 3.4 in average they score positively in the DNA. So it is not enough to a poor person. It's not enough to participate in study in good schools because there are social and structural aspects that imply the inequality of learning and perhaps in generational aspects. So it's not enough to study in good schools if there is a giant inequality between income in the Brazil. And finally, in rural schools, it's visible that the number of students per class imply in less learning. Furthermore, the school structure positively affects performance. This paper it's a work in progress. We're just beginning our researches, and there are so many points that we can improve. For example, we can incorporate aspects of the complexity of the structure of the school. Bigger schools can imply positively or negatively in the student activity. Are points we can advance and active research. I'm sorry for the presentation, the slides. I don't know what happened, but I am available for your comments and criticism. Thank you. Thank you. Isadora? Isadora, can you see if there are some questions, commentaries, ideas in the chat? Thank you, Daniel and Emerson. I don't know if Isadora. Oh, no questions. Okay. Someone want to talk about something? No. So thank you. So I believe we can hear now the Daniel. Okay. Daniel, welcome again. You have 20 minutes for your presentation, but we have no much persons here, so you take your time. Good presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here, and I will present this work with Emerson Costa dos Santos and Maria Alice Vieira dos Santos. It's about coordination between monetary and fiscal policy in Brazil, an analysis of the Brazilian economic post-inflation targets. This presentation will have an introduction, a brief literature review, methodology, and results. So we know that monetary and fiscal policies must achieve the prime directive and determine and control the price level and get a stable real debt. In this way, it can deliver what society's demand, economic growth, stability of the financial system, income distribution, and high employment. High employment. Um, in 1994, Brazil have a monetary stabilization plan, and it follows three macroeconomic principles, what we call the tripé macroeconômico. Uh, it follows a primary surplus, inflation targets, and a floating exchange rate. Since then, Brazil have seen high interest rates, primary deficit since 2014, and strong growth and public debt. These are the, the data about public sector financing needs. You can see that since 2014 have strong increase, and in the pandemic period. The public debt and the blue line, we have the net public debt, and red line, we can see the gross debt, a strong increase since 2014. This is the interest rate, the Selic, and inflation. You can see that in 2003, after 2002 elections, and 2015, the crisis, and in the 2021-2022 pandemic period. We can see this inflation shocks. So, introduction about this subject. It's a monetary policy affects the evolution of public debt directly by the interest rate set by the monetary authority. We also know that insolvency risk may affect inflation. In this work by Blanchard, we know that exchange rate can lead to exchange rate depreciation and impact on inflation. So we have a great debate central bank about the central bank action. It must control inflation or to guarantee the stability of the debt. And the treasury, it can respond to debt shocks with a fiscal adjustment. So it's the debate. A brief literature review is that the debate focuses on discretionary policies and rules. The debate about the coordination of the policies are relatively recent, and we had some hypotheses. Those are government debt always solvent. We have a recurring regime, so the choice of monetary policy determines the price level. Therefore, there is no room to discuss coordination between fiscal and monetary policies. But Science, Sargent, and Wallace, they introduced the role of fiscal policy and determine the price level. So the deficits can be financed by a seniorage and bond sales to the public. And they call we can have two different regimes: a monetary dominance regime, where the monetary policy acts independently, it defines the growth rate of the monetary base, and The seniority and revenue is predetermined by the monetary authority. So fiscal policy just adjusts your budget accordingly. The assignment, the temporal budget constraint. The fiscal dominance regime, on the other hand, fiscal policy independently establishes its budget. So the present, future surplus or debts are established, and the debt and seniority requirements are predetermined by the fiscal authority. And there is a limit to the debt to GDP ratio set by public demand. So monetary policy may need to give up inflation control if this limit is achieved. Another important work is Sleeper, 1991, and who he presents the response to real debt to value shocks. An increase can lead to an increase in surplus or money creation. So if one policy is active, what he calls active, then the other policy must be supportive, what he calls passive. So an active authority pays no attention to the state of government debt and is free to set this control variable. And a passive policy is limited to the actions of active policy in response to public debt shocks. So an active monetary policy is when a monetary authority adjusts its instrument to control inflation, and a fiscal authority just increase its surplus whenever real debt is above the desired level. So fiscal policy behaves passively and stabilizes the public debt. And an active fiscal policy will have a budget defined independently of the level of your public debt, and monetary authority adjusts this instrument so that debt shocks does not grow too rapidly. Monetary policy passively stabilizes debt. Ultimately, we have the fiscal tier of price level, and what Cochrane says that it's an equilibrium condition rather than the budget constraint. So the real debt must equal to the present value of primary surplus. And a government obligation is always a private sector asset. So if the idea is that if expected surplus decline, the demand for public bonds will reduce. So people, you set its government assets and you sell its government assets and buy goods and services, thus pushing a price level. So these are the impacts of the fiscal policy on inflation. Is a literature review for Brazil. We have some works on most of them suggest that Brazil has a monetary dominance regime, and we will work on that. So the model will run a var when the explanation when this model is done instrument in econometrics to analyze multivariate time series and capture simultaneous relationships among multiple time series variables. So we have a set of endogenous variables, a set of k and lagged endogenous variables, and a white noise process. But var models are made to stationary time series, and the data we have here are non-stationary. So Engel Granger created the concept of co-integration, where the seeks verify whether the variables have a common dynamic over time, make them work together. So if the variables are co-integrated, there's a mechanism that guarantees balance between them. And we run a Johansson co-integration test. This procedure seeks to identify the number of system co-integration relations. This model is based on a reparameterized var. So this model in this test seeks to stabilize the rank of the matrix, and if the rank of the matrix is lower than the number of variables, will have are linear combinations, and these linear combinations are the long run relationships. So the model in short term for any short term imbalances you corrected for these long run relationships, and this matrix can be expressed by multiplying two existing matrices. The alpha matrix is the speed of adjustment to longer term equilibrium, and the beta matrix presents the integration vectors of these is the coefficient of this long run relationship. It is expected that it will be possible to define a long-term integration vectors that reveal monetary and fiscal policies actions through the analysis variables. This is the data we have. We work with the interest rate, SELIC, the government fiscal needs, inflation expectations, real exchange rate index, the central bank economic activity index, and public debt. So the test we run is indicate that the variables are balanced and they are integrated, indicating that we have two long run relationships. So you can normalize it to the variable you want, and we did a normalization to monetary policy. So it's a vector for monetary policy normalized to the interest rate, and to fiscal policy, a vector normalized to the government's fiscal need. The results of these vectors, coefficient vectors. So to the first long-term relationship normalized to interest rate, we can see that the coefficients of the public debt variable indicates that these variables have direct relationships. It's important to say that this analysis is inverted with inverted sign. So the coefficients of the public debt indicate a direct relationships because the sign is negative. And inflation expectations have a significant effect on the relationship with interest rates. The second vector for the fiscal needs, government fiscal needs, presents an inverse relationship between interest and the government fiscal need. The sign GDP coefficient is negative, suggesting that the effect of an increase in GDP on fiscal need will decrease. Increasing that will require an improvement in public accounts in order to stop the increase. And the fiscal policy rules indicate having some countercyclical effect in relation to GDP. So this is the long-run relationship, the equilibrium. So the model in the short term corrects to this long run. These are adjustment coefficients, the alpha matrix, and we can see that for the adjustment coefficients of the fiscal policy vector, the public debt corrects imbalances by around 1.13%, and inflation expectations also respond to short-term fluctuations, corrected by around 1.33% each period. So the public debt adjusts in both short-term relationships with statistically significant coefficients, and for this, the SELIC variable that represent a high coefficient in terms of error correction each period was not statistically significant. So we can say that in Brazil, monetary policy can be considered as dominant, in which is following Sporer's rule. So the monetary policy does not correct for the long-run relationship. It follows its own policy rule. The results suggest that there is evidence that monetary policy behaves actively and fiscal policy passively, but that adjusts to imbalances in each period. This varies the composition of the SELIC variable. We can see that around 12% of the future trajectory of the basic interest rates is determined by inflation and inflation expectations. And public debt would account for less than 1%. So monetary policy follows its own monetary policy rule in control. Varies the composition for the government fiscal needs, and GDP represents 10% of future variations. The SELIC variable accounted for around 8% of future trajectory of this variable. So it reinforces the idea that monetary policy was active in the period analyzed. This is the impulse response functions uh, for the Selic. When you see that the response for IPCA inflation shocks are positive, is the cumulative response from the government fiscal needs uh, and for the public debt. So we can see that the public debt adjusts in the long term, and this adjust is made by the fiscal authority. The monetary authority just follow its own rule to responding to inflation shocks. Thanks for your attention.
Congratulations, Daniel. Excellent presentation. Congratulations for your paper. It's a really relevant paper. Uh, so, Isadora, can you see if there is someone in the chat to want to do some question? No questions. So, Fab is not here, no? uh, I would like just to say congratulations to Danielle. Uh, it's a really important paper. I cannot contribute for your research, but I believe there's a good way. uh, so if there's no questions on the chat, uh, I believe we can. Oh, cool. uh, I believe we can end this session. No, someone would like to say something. Daniel Emerson. No. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Daniel Emerson, Isadora, Daisy, and everyone who watching us. Uh, should better if we were presentially, but we are here online and it's good too. So thank you everyone. See you soon.